the long service awards on payroll. Now, with long service awards, basically we're saying this is recognition of long service, loyalty, and it's the way of the company saying thank you to an employee. Also, if an employee has served you for 5 years at a particular grade and then somebody joins in the current month, there should be a difference between what the employee who has been with you for 5 years is earning and what this new employee is coming is also earning. It will be unfair for them to earn exactly the same amount. Even though they're in the same grade, we need to also appreciate the long service. Now, with long service, before I start looking at it in payroll, long service, there are usually 2 formats that you can use for long service. And usually, long service, it is enshrined in a collective bargaining agreement. That means if you want to know more about long service, the first port of call is your CBA. So you open your CBA and check if it has a calculation for long service, because you'll find that long service is recognized differently from industry to industry. So sometimes you'll find that the calculations for long service are industry specific. Or even the years for one to be recognized as having served long service differs from industry to industry. You find some industries say you should have worked for at least 3 years. When you've worked for 3 years, we begin to recognize that you've had long service. Some say 5, some say 10. So it always differs depending with the industry that you're in. And also, long service can be paid in 2 formats. Either it can be paid as a monthly allowance that an employee can receive, or it can be paid as annual recognition, maybe at an annual award, at an employee's anniversary, they can actually receive that long service award. So I'm going to be showing you both ways. If you want it to be running as a monthly allowance, which the employee gets each and every month, or you want it to be on the employee's anniversary. So if they have now clocked 5 years at their anniversary, they will then be able to get the long service award. Now, let me share my screen and then let me look straight into payroll. Now, when you're running your payroll, if you want to set up long service awards, the first thing that you need to do is to create an NEC table for your employees, because long service awards are linked to the NEC table that would be set up in the payroll. So before you even start looking at long service, the first thing you do is you must create an NEC table. If you already have an NEC table, you can then make sure that your employees must be on that NEC. Now, where do we find our NEC tables? If you go to codes, and if you come down to NEC tables, you'll find this is the table where you can set up your different NECs. I already have some NECs set up, like your NEC catering, it's just NEC simple. I also have NEC agriculture. Let's select NEC agriculture as an example. You'll see that with your NEC agriculture, you have got your scheme, you have the deduction code for NEC, which is 710, which is the code that will appear on an employee's payslip. And then you have the parameters at the bottom. Now with your parameters, you'll find that you've got your start salary, which is $1, end salary 1,000. So for employees that are earning between $1 and $1,000, they are going to have a percentage. That's why you see there's a tick on percentage there. They're going to have a percentage of 0.0125. Now the percentage here in the NEC tables is always put in decimal notation. So decimal notation, 1% in decimal notation is 0.01. 10% in decimal notation is 0.1%, 0.10. And then 100% in decimal notation is demarcated as 1.00. So if you look closely in this table, the employee is having an NEC percentage of 0.0125. This is actually 1.25%, which is being deducted from the employee, and another 1.25% being deducted from the employer. And remember, this is the only place in the payroll, the whole payroll, where you put figures in decimal notation. Everywhere else, we put them as straight values. And then if you look at the parameters in this table, if an employee is earning from $1 to 1,000, the percentage is 1.25%. And if the employee is earning more than $1,000, so if they're earning from 1,001 and to infinity, it's not going to be a percentage. That's why you find under the percentage column, there is no tick, meaning that what comes after that is an amount, which is $7.5 employee contribution and $7.5 employer contribution. So this is the demarcation that is there. So you can actually set up your table to have just a percentage on its own, or you can set it up to have percentages and values for your employees. I just thought maybe it's important for me just to share how you set up your NEC table. So make sure you have an NEC for all your employees, and they must be on that particular table. What that means is in the master file, if I select an employee, I need to make sure that under schemes, they are on NEC agriculture. That means this is the table that they are going to be using. Now, you may then say, Nick, what of employees who are not on NEC? In other words, if you have employees that are ungraded, that's what we call them, ungraded staff, management, there are no grades in the collective bargaining agreement, but you also want to set up a long service table for them. What it means is you need to create an NEC table as well, but you do not put in any percentages for them. So if you come here, you'd put 0 for employee contribution and 0 for employer contribution. All we want is for them to be on an NEC table so that they can also have the long service award being calculated for them. Now, in this instance, we have our NEC agriculture. This is the one that we are going to use. So once you have set up your table, the second step is you put your employees on NEC in the master file. Then after you have done that, you can go on to create the long service award table. Where do we do this? If you come to your codes, and under your codes, if you go down to where it says long service awards, if you select that one, this is the one that we use for calculating your long service. So here, where it says long service, as you can see at the top, where it says code, it says new, meaning we want to create a new table. There may be other tables already existing in there, but we want to create a new table for ourselves. And this table, we're going to call it NEC Agriculture Awards. And once I've done that, remember that this long service is an earning. We are paying an allowance to the employee. So you also then need to ensure that you have a long service earning code. Here I have already created the code 015 for long service. I will select that one. And this is now the earning code that will appear on the employee's payslip with the calculation done. And now, in order for it to work, we now need to link it to the NEC agriculture table. You see why it is important, therefore, to have an NEC table, to also have a long service award earning code, and to ensure that employees are on NEC Agriculture when they are in the master file. Right. Once you've done that, we can now come to the next parameter. Here it says generate monthly. Remember, I said to you, a long service award can be paid either monthly or it can be paid at the anniversary of the employee. In other words, annually. So if you leave it blank, it is going to treat it as an annual award. If it is going to be monthly, you simply tick monthly, and then every single month, the employee is going to receive the long service allowance. Now, once you've done that, you can then look at the rate, which rate you want to use. Basic on 010. What this simply means is when calculating the long service, which basic pay should we use? Which rate should we use? There are two basic pays that you can direct the payroll to use. Either it can use the master file pay rate. I'll select an employee here. In payrolls, it'll come and use, let me go and select another employee. It'll come and use this pay rate that you find in here. So it's going to use 316 as US dollars, and it's also going to use 5,280 for the ZIG component. So if you leave it blank in the NEC table, so in this long service table, let me just drag this here. It means where it says basic to use, it will then, if you leave it blank, it's going to come and use this basic. If you put a tick, it's not going to use this basic. It's going to use the basic that is found in your earnings and deductions under code 010. In other words, it's going to come and use these basic salaries here. Now, most people will then say, Nick, but they are the same. Yes, they are the same, but they are not always the same. Because you're going to find that there are people who are paid on a daily rate, and they are paid their basic salary based on the days that they've worked in the month. Now, if I put the days that the employee has worked, obviously, their salary is going to be different from the rate that is found in the master file. And so the effect is that if I say to the payroll, I want to use, let me just close this. I want to use 010 basic pay. It's now going to use the basic, especially the one that is found on 010. So that if you have employees who are being paid per day, you calculate how much they're going to be earning depending on the number of days they've worked. It will then use that basic to calculate long service. So long service will also fluctuate together with the basic that is fluctuating depending with what the employee has worked, number of days that they've worked. So you can actually then pay according to what the employee has received as a basic, which is different from the rate that is found in the master file. Because in the master file, the rate is constant. It does not change from month to month. So it is really up to you which one you want to use. If you want to use the actual basic received, or you want to use the pay rate in the master file. So you can then select whichever you want. After you have done that, you can then come and start putting in the parameters for one to receive the long service. In other words, you're then going to say, which number of years, when do we start recognizing long service? Now, this is where you check in your CBA because it varies from industry to industry. Let's say for NEC Agriculture, it starts recognizing long service from 3 years. So start number of years, you'd put 3. Up to, let's say, up to 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a percentage of the basic salary. And let's say it's going to be 10%. And then from 6, let's say, to 10 years, it's going to be 15% of basic. And then from 11, let's say, to 15, this is going to be 20%, and so forth and so on. So you can continue on and on and on. Let's do one last one. And let's say from 16 years to 50 years. And it's going to be 30% as long service. Once you have set this up, you can go and click on apply. And as you can see now, we have table 3. Instead of saying you, it now has table 3. So table 3, it is specific to the NEC agriculture, and it will now use the parameters found in the NEC agriculture CBA. And so the way it works, it will then look at the start date of your employee, and it will calculate 3 years. And within 3 years, after 3 years, it will start giving 10% to the employee as, like I've signaled there, as a monthly allowance. The employee is going to get that as a monthly allowance. If it is an annual anniversary allowance, it's going to multiply by 12 and give us the lump sum at the anniversary of the employee. So it will look at 3 to 5 years. It will check on that and then give the allowance according to the setting. And then from 6 years to 10, 11 to 15, and so forth and so on. So the system will now look at the employee's master file, look at the date hired, look at the number of years of service, and automatically calculate how much the long service is, and it will award that to the employee when you run your draft. So once you've set it like this, it will automatically do the rest for you. So this is how we set up our long service awards. As a recap, before I open up the session, as a recap, we said for you to be able to create your long service table, you must have an NEC table first. And in the master file, make sure you have also put in employees onto that NEC. Make sure you also have an earning code for your long service awards. And then lastly, you can go and create the NEC table and put in the relevant years which the employee is supposed to receive. And this is how you set up your long service awards. Now, are there any questions in regards to long service that you may have? If so, you can go ahead and ask your questions. You can unmute yourself and you can ask. Or you can put it in the chat if you have anything to ask in regards to long service. Right. One is asking, is long service the same as gratuities? Well, normally with gratuities, some use them interchangeably, but usually a gratuity is paid when an employee is having their contract of employment being terminated. Usually this is when we then call it a gratuity, but the effect is the same. The principle is the same. A gratuity, you are saying thank you for your years of service, and we are now recognizing this at termination. Whereas long service now, you are recognizing that long service, but you are not terminating the employee's contract. They are remaining with you. You are just acknowledging that long service by increasing their earnings with an allowance which they are getting. So it's slightly different in that regard. However, the calculation of gratuities is also done in the CBA. So you need to check in the CBA if an employee is going to be paid a gratuity at the termination of a contract. You then need to then check how that gratuity is going to be calculated. It's usually, again, a percentage of the employee's basic multiplied by the number of years that they've worked for the organization. And these parameters differ from industry to industry. Thank you for that question, Yvonne. Are there any other questions that you guys might have? All right, so there's a follow-up which says, okay, if so, if you pay long service whilst employed, then you don't pay the gratuities when the contract is terminated. Now, if you are recognizing an employee's long service, it is usually at your volition. You are not obliged to pay long service awards if you do not want to do so. However, you are obliged to pay a gratuity if at the termination of a contract of employment. Usually, this is where it also differs. Gratuities must be paid. Whereas long service, if there is no cash flow, you may not need to pay that out. It is not obligatory in some CBAs. However, in some CBAs, they may force you to pay both. So what you need to do is to check in your collective bargaining agreement and see if there's a concession whereby if you're paying out a long service, there may be no need for you to pay a gratuity. However, I have not seen a CBA that says so. At the end of a contract, usually they mandate that every employer must pay a gratuity when terminating a contract of employment. I hope I've answered you there. Right. Are there any other questions? I know this long service awards, it is usually a very easy topic. It's just a tip, a facility that we want to remind each other that is found in payroll, which you can also use. All right, it seems there are no more questions. But before I go, I've been also asked by our support desk, our support team, to remind you that this year, Zimra has changed the goalposts for us on the terms module. If you remember very well, on the terms platform, they introduced the non-FDS module in November 2025. And under this module, you are now supposed to upload 2 files. You are supposed to upload your FDS employees return, and you're also supposed to upload your non-FDS return. So when you're creating your returns, if you know that you have employees that have joined in February going forward, you now need to create 2 upload files, one for FDS, one for non-FDS. And if you haven't received that update from us for you to be able to create those 2 upload files, please get in touch with our support team. They'll also be happy to transfer that file onto your machine using any desk. It can be done remotely. So please make sure that if you haven't been uploading those 2 and maybe you're used to uploading 1, please make sure going forward you also create the 2. When you're creating, you've got where it says FDS employees, there's where it says FDS only, and there's also where it says non-FDS only. So you select FDS when you're generating the upload file for FDS employees, and you also do one for your non-FDS employees. Now, when they introduced this non-FDS module, they also removed some credits that employees were enjoying whilst you were on the old FDS. Now, the new regulations are that if an employee is a non-FDS employee, in other words, they join your company in February going forward, you are supposed to stop awarding credits to them. They are not supposed to have any credits at all, be it the blind persons, be it the elderly, be it the disability credit, be it the medical credit. The implication is that even if employees present you with receipts, if they are non-FDS employees, in other words, they joined from February going forward, then you must not process those claims that they are bringing through. Further to this, remember, you are also not allowed to, you're supposed to issue employees at the end of the year a P6 form. So each and every employee who is non-FDS, when it comes to the end of the year, you are supposed to give them an FDS, a P6 form, so that they are able to reconcile their own figures from your company to the figures where they were working prior to joining your organization. And they are now required, after getting the P6 from your organization and reconciling their own information from the previous employer, they are supposed to fill out an ITF1, which they submit. And the ITF1 is submitted after it has been notified that it is required by the commissioner. And now, usually, we were told by ZIMRA that the commissioner will call for the ITF1 in April. So April is coming up. Let's prepare. If you have employees that have left your organization, make sure that you have given them, you can email them their P6, or if they have left, you can notify them. If they are still with your organization and they join during the year, print out a P6 and give it to them. Now, you don't do the reconciliations for them as an employer, because you don't have the jurisdiction to ask what the employee was earning prior to them joining your organization. So you simply issue the employee with the P6. The employee must then go to ZIMRA and do the upload themselves. They are supposed to go onto the ZIMRA portal and they are supposed to declare their own earnings. Yesterday, I was at a workshop and I asked a question which was very important. I said to ZIMRA, why is it you require employees to give you a ITF1 when they are non-FDS? Yet, during the year, you actually collect that data. Because if they are working for this particular company, that company is uploading onto terms. If they leave that company and join your company, they are still going to be uploaded onto terms. So at ZIMRA, they have an employee's complete information from the time they were working in January, the company they were working for, and when they changed jobs, the new company which they joined, and going forward. They actually have all that data. Why do you still require for the employee to send an ITF1? The answer that they gave to me was that it's based on the current tax laws that we have in our country. Our current tax laws say that for ZIMRA officials to be able to do any actions on an employee's figures, the employee must first declare their figures. And it is based on that declaration that ZIMRA can then issue credits, can look at audits and everything. Without a declaration, our current laws do not allow ZIMRA to even question anything at all. So that's why they are asking employees to put in the ITF1, that is the declaration of earnings, so that ZIMRA can then effect the credits and give back those credits to the employee. So I thought maybe it's important for me to still remind you of this. Now, with this, you may also have on your own payrolls, you may have employees on medical aid. You may also have medical aid credits. And for non-FDS, they are not supposed to access those medical aid credits. So if you find that you now have non-FDS employees who are on medical aid and who must not have the medical aid credit, you can get in touch with our support team. They can also give you an update on payroll. This is now different from the terms upload update, which I talked of earlier. This one now is an update which will then bar Payday from issuing any credits to non-FDS employees. So if you require it, I know in January there was no need for us to have it because everybody was treated the same. In February, you may not have new employees, but if you do and you have medical aid and you want to stop it from being a credit, please get in touch with our support team. I think I just needed to also discuss this with you, just to remind you on this, so that you are also aware of what is going on. So watch out for the public notice from ZIMRA saying that they now require the ITF1 to be submitted. They are looking at other platforms which they can use, which are more user-friendly, because I also asked a question yesterday to say, if you are saying an employee must go onto the self-service portal and declare their own earnings on their own, you have employees out there who are not computer literate, who do not even have access to a computer. How are they going to declare their earnings on the ZIMRA portal? How can they do the ITF1? And they gave me an answer to say they are going to be looking at kiosks, which they are going to be dotting all over the country. They're also going to be trying to make sure that people can go to the nearest ZIMRA office for assistance. They're going to be having mobile teams going out. I think there was also this talk of that. And they're also looking at other platforms in which one can also declare. But these things take time. This is the answer that they gave to